As I've recently been speaking about this doctrine about keeping the law, it really vexed my spirit about how evil this world really is, and then really seeing truly how much times don't truly change from the past. Our Father loves us and has provided us all with a way of atonement so that we are able to be connected to Him, because He cannot dwell around the unclean and unholy. He has provided us all a way to be accepted by Him. But the wickedness in the hearts of men have attached to Satan so much that they have determined that what he did was not good enough. And in order to accept his gift, he really needs to say that we don't do anything towards him in regards to obedience. He should just accept us because we believe in Yahusha, his son. It is truly a scary thing to imagine the amount of people that will be standing before him thinking they were accepting him, and Yahusha tell them, "I never knew you." Basically saying, "You are not one of my sheep." It's truly scary to really imagine it, but we know this is exactly what will be the future for many. And this topic in this video is one of the main reasons for it. I've talked for years about this false doctrines, from the pagan holidays to the changing of the Sabbath day to Sunday, which they call the eighth day, to false religious worship, to the Trinity doctrine, to being attached to the ways and mindsets of this world. All these things. But what it really all falls down to is this overall topic of the law. Because people feel that Yah's law is no longer something we adhere to, it's exactly why there are so many different types of application around this faith. If people were serious about the law, people would be so careful about applying all these different applications. The religion of Christianity is a faith of Gentiles that are only influenced by the Hebrew scriptures, but also it veers away from Yah on the things that Yah requires. This religion does not lead to Yahuwah, but to Satan. And I do understand why people can be so defensive about a point like that. But there's nothing else that can be said, especially with these times that we're in. It is a major warning that I do not say lightly, but I wish people would heed. Yah is holy, and his people must be as well. And Christianity does not create the conditions for this. Christianity is a faith created and influenced by Gentiles that presents a form of the faith that was carried by the Israelites, but leaves out the important factors of being holy and set apart that our Father Yahweh requires. I mean, in Christianity, we don't even call our Father by his name, but they just call him God. God, a general title that other religions like Satanism use for who they worship. Using this title alone does not make Yah separate and set apart from all these other false gods. He has a name. This faith of Christianity is presented from the mindset of pagan Gentile converts that have adapted their religion to the way that they would like to see it and how they believe it should be. And they did this from the start because, as our Messiah prophesied in his parable, they are tares that Satan planted in the same field Yahusha planted his good seed. And above all doctrines, this doctrine of lawlessness that the Christian church likes to call grace, this is a doctrine of Satan that is all about a promotion of rebellion. And the reason why I believe most do not understand this is because they have heard the scriptures from a complete Gentile perspective. The Bible is not a Gentile book. It is a book about the Hebrews that both Israel and Gentiles all can learn from to know what it is our Father loves and what it is that he hates. If we stop looking at the scriptures from our own perspective, but from the perspective that the Bible is written from, I think that this faith that we all claim would be much easier to understand. I mean, imagine if you're in China and you're attaching Chinese culture to the Hebrew scriptures. There is a lot of things that would be misunderstood because the culture of the Hebrews is set apart from all other nations in the world. So listen, I want to present this biblical faith to you from the perspective of the Hebrews who actually wrote the scriptures, and not from the perspective of the Gentiles who hijacked it. When this is over, this paradigm shift, I'm sure, will steer all who love Yahweh into the truth. Let's begin. Okay, so I don't want to start too far off, but I don't want to skip important points. So we're just going to start here. Let's be clear that through the history of this large world, there was only one group of people attached to the creator of heaven and earth. This was the children of Israel. These people were chosen by him and were in a covenant by him that they broke and were punished severely by him. But one of them, the kingdom of Yahudah, was given another chance to be right with Yah, and they came back to the land, and they weren't going to fail at it because they rather die for obedience to Yah rather than live and be in rebellion with him. And at some point before Yahusha came, they fought for their independence, and that was called the Maccabean Wars. They fought against the Greeks. This book is in the Catholic Bibles, but is not in the Protestant Bibles. And because of this, a part of the culture of the Hebrews is lost that people do not understand before Yahusha came. I don't think Christians really have a strong understanding of the true way of ancient Israel. But really, to understand the Bible, you really need to have a good understanding of the set-apart ways and how they were. So let's understand it from understanding who these people were and how they lived. They were a people in their land, while also many of them, they were scattered around Asia Minor, and they had their own communities, and they lived a life different than every other nation around them. You see, according to their Torah, they were not allowed to mix and adapt to the ways and the customs of the other nations. They were given rules that they were required to live by. Now, the most important commands were given to their ancestors, and those commands were written on tablets of stone that was then moved into the most holiest place of their land. There were 10 commandments that they were told that they had to abide in. There were also many other customs and laws as well. They were very much a nation tied to their laws and way of life, and most people don't recognize how serious it was. If you want a contemporary example and understanding of this, you should look at countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran. Saudi Arabia enforces Sharia law with little tolerance for other religions or interpretations of Islam. Practicing any other religion other than Islam there is prohibited, and apostasy, meaning abandoning Islam, can be punishable by death. You see, this is their way that they live in their land. It is their religion and how they are told that they are to worship their God. And there is absolutely no tolerance for other ideas and practices. Now, I can use Islam as an example because Islam is influenced from the Torah of the Yahudim who lived in Arabia at the time of Muhammad's conversion. But that's another story. Please don't get lost with that. The point I am making is that 2,000 years ago in the land of Judea, the people of Saudi Arabia and Iran could be compared very much to these people. I'm speaking in regards to tolerance. They had no tolerance for the breaking of the Torah, and the Torah was their culture. It was the way that they lived their life. They were the only nation of people that no matter where they were, on the seventh day, they stopped and they rested. They met at their synagogues and worshiped a different God than everyone else in the world. They didn't eat the same foods. They did not intermarry and intermingle. They basically were a nation that said that they are the chosen ones by the creator of this world, and this is how we should worship him, and everyone else doesn't matter. Okay, that's the gist. This was the way that they lived their life, and so that leads us to the period of times of the New Testament when Yahusha came on the scene. And at this period, we see the death and resurrection of Yahusha, our Messiah. Yahusha is the Holy One who is prophesied to come. There was a great deal of prophecy about him that he fulfilled, and he had a following of believers before he died, and then after he resurrected, his followers grew the belief in him and spread it, and belief in him became very controversial. The book of Acts said, "Then the word of Elohim spread, and the number of the disciples multiplied greatly in Jerusalem, and a great many of the priests were obedient to the faith." Acts chapter 6, verse 7. "And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. Then there arose some of what is called the synagogue of the freedmen, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and those from Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. Then they secretly induced men to say, 'We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and Elohim.' And they stirred up the people, the elders and the scribes, and they came upon him, seized him, and brought him to the council. They also set up false witnesses who said, 'This man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Yahusha of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs which Moses delivered to us.' And all who sat in the council, looking steadfastly at him, saw his face as the face of an angel." Acts chapter 6, verses 8 through 15. And they killed Stephen. So what I'm explaining is that because of Yahusha, there was a radical change that was happening and gaining influence. There was a change to the customs that the Yahudim, particularly the religious leaders, that they rebelled against. The followers of Yahusha were declaring that there was a change to the law. And this is the basis of where religion starts, where all the confusion starts. So let's start here. What Christianity says. Christianity wants to say that there was a change to the law. And basically what that means is that all that our Father required Israel to do for salvation is no longer needed. They call all of it works, basically working for salvation. Let me read this. According to the Christian website, gotquestions.org, in regards to faith versus works, it says, biblical Christianity teaches salvation by faith in Jesus Christ, apart from any works we do. Perhaps the best place to start is to clearly define faith and works. What is faith? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 sets out the definition. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Faith is that which assures us that our hope is reality, even though we cannot yet see it. If we have faith, we are convinced that what we believe is real, true, and reliable. The biblical object of faith is the person and work of Jesus Christ. True faith has always been the identifying mark of the people of God. What are works? Works are a person's actions or deeds. Work is that which we perform for some kind of reward. We work at our jobs and expect to receive a paycheck for it. Even working on a voluntary basis has its own reward. Praise from others, a feeling of goodwill, etc. In the context of salvation, work refers to good deeds we do, especially religious or charitable acts or the observance of the Old Testament law. That right there. In the faith versus works debate, two sides maintain that either we are saved by faith and faith alone, or we're saved by works, or more commonly, works added to the faith. Which side is correct? What is the biblical relationship between faith and works? And they discuss some of the points. Okay. Let's just focus on the main point. That in regards to this faith, they consider works to be good deeds. That's how Christianity defines it. And this definition is extremely important to get down to, because what if what Paul was calling works of the law was not the same definition that Christians were declaring it to be? Could it be that that one definition helped create a new religion? So based on that article from Got Questions, it asserts that basically in Christianity, doing our good deeds in order to receive this gift that Yah gave Israel is looked at as works. And because it's works, and we're not justified by our works, we are not required to do these things that Yah has said. So therefore, in Christianity, what is preached is that everything that our Father told Israel to do and how to live according to the Old Covenant is a form of works. And it makes it that you're trying to earn your salvation if you do that. And so basically what Christianity tells us to believe is that this nation of people, after Yahusha died and resurrected, there are a body of believers who are called the church. And they went around telling everyone that all the ways that the children of Israel lived since they came out of Egypt no longer mattered. And they were not tied to these laws and statutes any longer. This is what Christianity imagines it to be. According to Christianity, imagine that they were out there telling the people that they didn't have to keep the Torah anymore. We're talking about to the Yahudim. Telling the Yahudim that they didn't have to follow those laws anymore. Saying stuff like, everything that our Father chastised and punished our ancestors for not following, he has now given us all a way that we don't need to do any of these customs anymore. Basically, they're saying, what we say and what we write to you, all now, this is what you follow. So you can imagine that some of the followers said, well, what about the 10 Commandments? They said, well, of course we keep the 10, but we don't have to keep that fourth one anymore. We don't honor the seventh day, but we'll keep the 8th day because it's new. Oh, also, eat whatever you want. We know that all our lives these foods were not good for us, and we never let these unclean animals touch our lips before. But because Messiah died for us, these foods are now good for us. Remember Isis? Wait a second. Wait. Who's that? Mashiach. Oh, Isis, that's his name in Greek. Why did you change his name? Was the Messiah Greek? His name was Yahusha. Oh, you all don't get it. It's new. Our culture doesn't matter over anyone else's anymore. We were only set apart under the old covenant. Today we are something new. If you want to call him by Greek, it's fine. Even though we despise those Greeks who try to take over our land and force us into their customs, now that Messiah died for us, we can now adapt to the Greeks. You know, because it's popular. This is what everyone says, so we should say it. Satan's movement is grown in much more influence than ours, so it's only right that we just adjust to it so everybody can understand. Anyways, Isis, remember, he said that it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a man. Hold up. Wait a second. My cousin was there when Yahusha said that, and he was talking about the tradition we have about washing our hands before we eat. My cousin literally said, he explained to his disciples, for out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, and blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. That's what he said. He didn't say we can eat a pig. Yahuwah said, those who eat swine's flesh and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed. We don't understand. Are you saying Yahuwah changed? No, he never changed, except that he did. He said the things he has always cared about and guided us to follow, he no longer cares about those things. He's made things much easier for us. You all don't get it? We're Christians. Isis is the Christos. And because we follow Isis, all we have to do is now believe. That's it. Wait, so you're saying now that all we have to do is believe? Yes, this is what I'm saying. Believe is all we have to do because we have liberty now. Oh, before I forget, let me give you this. Take this. Bro, what's this? Oh, this is my Christmas list. Christmas list? What's Christmas? Well, you know how the Greeks, the Romans, the Babylonians, Egyptians, they all celebrate their god on the winter solstice? Well, we've decided that we're going to celebrate Isis's birthday at the same time, and we give each other gifts and we put up Christmas trees. Wow, brother, this is really too much for me to follow. This sounds completely opposite from everything I was told by the law and the prophets. I really can't catch on to any of this. There's so many changes. You are saying that the law and commands that we lived under, that they're no longer valid, and everything that Yah said to us, we no longer have to follow. It's not the 10 commandments anymore, but it's really 9, but still really 10, because Sunday's the 8th. You're saying all foods are no longer unclean, so even though pigs eat trash, we can still eat them. You're saying that the feasts Yah told us to remember are no longer to be celebrated, and we're now celebrating Christmas and Easter. Yahusha wasn't born in December though. That's not even our calendar, but that's what we're supposed to be using. And based on what you've said, we don't set this date of Easter to how we celebrate Passover, but according to a new cycle with the moon that the other wicked pagan nations are tied to as well. This is what you're saying? I want to make sure I'm correct. You got it. Wow, being a Christian is awesome. This is what we're supposed to tell everyone. We must spread this news. I didn't even tell you the best part. What's the best part? Once you're saved and you accept Isis in your heart, there is nothing that you can do that will make you be rejected by Yah. So you know how our ancestors were always messing up? Now because of Isis, if we made those same mistakes after we accepted and believed in Isis, we would still not be rejected. Wow, so this really is a change. So our ancestors, they just really had just bad timing, huh? So if we just believe in all this, we're good no matter what. And is there nothing that we could do that will make him reject us? Huh. Actually, there is one thing. Okay, tell me, brother, what is it? You can be rejected if you ever try to do these laws and commands ever. If you keep the old commands our forefathers kept, you will go to hell. If you ever try to do what he told our ancestors to do, you will go to hell. Face it, you can't keep it, so now you don't have to anymore. And he's going to punish you if you try. Wow. Okay, so listen, all of this is so different than the Torah we read every Sabbath. How will our children know how to do this? Who's going to document this? I don't remember any word from Yahusha. I know you call him Isis, but I remember him as a Hebrew, not a Greek. Anyway, I remember Yahusha saying that he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. This sounds a lot like it's abolished now. How are we to be sure we are doing what's right? Listen, we know it's right because he said he's giving us something new. And this is new, isn't it? And the thing is that all these people later on, they're just going to have to figure it out and they're going to let their hearts guide. Okay. And yeah, I know I'm animating this and the dialogue might be a little off and corny, whatever. But honestly, when you put all these different beliefs into this religion, this is clearly what Christianity wants us to believe that this faith that comes from the Bible actually is. Basically, the true culture that these people of Israel lived through, it no longer applies, and keeping the law is considered as good works. But here's the thing, none of that is true. And if you don't like that animation, then you don't like the religion that you call Christianity, because that's exactly what the religion of Christianity portrays, just not in that same dialogue. Christianity is a completely false application of this biblical faith. It is not a representation of the faith that you would find if you read the scriptures from the beginning straight to the end, straight through. There is confusion and it needs to be set straight. This is the actual truth. Now, okay, let's go back in time. We still have the same people in the land that had the same culture that we just talked about earlier. Remember, different than everyone else in the world. But there is something that Christianity completely leaves out when examining and understanding them. Remember when we spoke about works and Christians looked at good deeds as works? Remember that, please. This is not the same way Israel looked at works. The works that Christianity speaks about are not the works Israel thinks of. What Christianity calls works are actually the rules and the ways that our Father says his children who follow him should live, and what we should do while living in this world. What Christians call works are not the same works that you read about in the New Testament that men like Paul were speaking about. You see, working for salvation and being justified by the law, it's a real thing when you understand the culture that Israel was under. They weren't trying to justify themselves by keeping the Sabbath. They were just living how Yah wanted them to live. When they were justifying themselves to Yah according to the Torah, they had rules that they had to engage in if they sinned. They had sin and trespass offerings, and these were the works. Let me read some. The sin offering. If any one of the common people sins unintentionally by doing something against any of the commandments of Yahweh in anything which ought not to be done, and is guilty, or if his sin which he has committed comes to his knowledge, then he shall bring as his offering a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he has committed. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill the sin offering at the place of the burnt offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and pour all the remaining blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, and fat removed from the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the priest shall burn it on the altar for a sweet aroma to Yahweh. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. If he brings a lamb as his sin offering, he shall bring a female without blemish. Then he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill it as a sin offering at the place where they killed the burnt offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour all the remaining blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of the peace offering. Then the priest shall burn it on the altar, according to the offerings made by fire to Yahweh. So the priest shall make atonement for his sin that he has committed, and it shall be forgiven him. Leviticus chapter 4, verses 27 through 35. Next, let's read about the trespass offering. If a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath and is a witness, whether he has seen or known of the matter, if he does not tell it, he bears guilt. Or if a person touches any unclean thing, whether it is the carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of an unclean livestock, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and he is unaware of it, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touches human uncleanness, whatever uncleanness with which a man may be defiled, and he is unaware of it, when he realizes it, then he shall be guilty. Or if a person swears, speaking thoughtlessly with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatever it is that a man may pronounce by an oath, and he is unaware of it, when he realizes it, then he shall be guilty in any of these matters. And it shall be, when he is guilty in any of these matters, that he shall confess that he has sinned in that thing. And he shall bring his trespass offering to Yahweh for his sin which he has committed. A female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of the goats, as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him concerning his sin. If he is not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring to Yahweh for his trespass which he has committed 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring off its head from its neck, but shall not divide it completely. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering, and he shall offer the second as a burnt offering according to the prescribed manner. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin which he has committed, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he is not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he who sinned shall bring his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering. But he shall put no oil on it, nor shall he put frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. Then he shall bring to the priest, and the priest shall take his handful of it as a memorial portion, burn it on the altar, according to the offerings made by fire to Yahuwah. It is a sin offering. The priest shall make atonement for him for his sin that he has committed in any of these matters, and it shall be forgiven him. The rest shall be the priest as a grain offering. Leviticus chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. You need to understand that there were specific things that if they ever messed up, that they had to do to atone for their sins. If they did not do these things, they were considered to not be atoned to our Father. They needed the priest to do these sin and trespass offerings, or else they would be rejected by Yah and not forgiven and not worthy of the kingdom. The sin offering was mandatory as it atoned for sins and cleansed them from defilement. There were 5 possible elements of the sin offering, depending on the financial situation of the person. A common person could offer a female goat. The poor could offer fine flour. You see, the ones of ancient Israel would offer sacrifices in the temple to atone for their sins. They had instructions from Yah what to do, and the faithful ones followed them. The sin offering cleared the man's responsibility for his sin. Either the guilt was borne by the individual, or its penalty was paid through a blood substitute. And if the whole congregation sinned in ignorance against Yah, it was necessary that a sin offering be presented for the whole congregation. You see, all of that that I just said right there, that is what works of the law is. This was the way Israel was being justified to Yah. Understand that Yah's ways are always his ways. If he wants people to live a certain way, he does not change. He also is not unfair or unjust. He did not chastise his people for actions that he later would no longer care about. That's ridiculous. When you hear about works of the law, understand that because Christianity summed up the whole law as being deeds, you don't truly understand what the works were that Israel was responsible for keeping. And that's the difference. Please notice this, because as Christians speak against the Sabbath and other laws, why don't they recognize this major change? What the new covenant changed was not about the moral statutes and the ways that our Father wanted his people to live. He did not change the culture of righteousness. He raised Israel to be an example of righteousness and being set apart. He did not just end this and leave it up to them to decide what it looks like. Absolutely not. You actually don't have any example in the scriptures of what living outside of the Torah looks like. What changed in the law is the way he allowed his people to atone. Before, in the old covenant, if they sinned, they were required to go to the priest and atone. Please imagine this lifestyle of the people. Like they treated their neighbor wrong by accident. They had to go and atone. They knew that they took something from the neighbor because of temptation, and now they needed to atone. When they sinned, they were required to go to the priest and atone. This is the law of atonement, and this is what Israel lived under. As you read the New Testament, you will see many different mentions from Paul and others speaking to these Hebrews about not being under the law and not trying to justify themselves under the law. You see, today, because we apply Gentile culture to this faith and priority over the faith of the Hebrews, we look at this all wrong. We look at obeying Yah and his commandments as works, when this is completely false. None of this is works. This is just us coming into submission and being his. Please think about this. When does anyone get accepted into a new club or new organization and not say to themselves that we're going to abide in the rules established before us? You know, the only time that this mindset is used is when Christianity was created. Christians said that they're going to accept this anointed one, the Christos, who they call Isis. but they did not have to follow the customs of the Yahudim. They made that decision. Let's look at what they say about his law. These are some of the quotes from the early church fathers. If anyone preaches the Jewish law to you, do not listen to him. For it is better to listen to Christian doctrine from a man who has been circumcised than to listen to Judaism from one who is uncircumcised. That's Ignatius. We do not follow the Jews in their peculiarities in regard to food, nor in their sacred days, nor even in their well-known bodily sign. Tertullian. The same God, therefore, who prohibited meats, also restored the use of them, for he had indeed originally allowed them. Again, that's Tertullian. Jesus wished to lead all men by his teachings about the pure worship and service of God. He was anxious not to place any hindrance in the way of many who might be benefited by Christianity. So he did not impose a burdensome code of rules in regard to food. That's Origen. Certainly, the introduction of Christianity is through the Mosaic worship and the prophetic writings. But after that introduction, progress takes place through the interpretation and explanation of these things. Those who advance in the knowledge of Christianity do not, as you allege, treat the things written in the law with disrespect. On the contrary, they bestow upon them greater honor, showing what depth of wise and mysterious reasons is contained in these writings, which are not fully comprehended by the Jews. Just because John the Baptist was a Jew, it does not follow that every believer, whether a convert from paganism or from Judaism, must literally obey the law of Moses. Origen. You see, from the get-go, they never had the true respect that our Father deserves. And everything that they say, the spirit of Christianity is in those that follow Christianity today. Most Christians speak like this exactly. And that's why so many people feel this way about not being under the rules and laws of Israel. But anyways, back to Israel. Israel, they were under a culture of being justified through the works of the law. Please get this right. They weren't justified for keeping the Sabbath. They weren't justified for not putting other gods before Yah. By them doing those things or not doing those things was them being in sin or not in sin. But it had nothing to do with them justifying themselves. They were being in alignment with their Creator, because this is what He required. They weren't trying to justify themselves. They were being obedient to what He commanded. But if they sinned and messed up, then they had to atone. And they would have to go through the law of atonement to then become justified to Yah and to be accepted. And this is all about the law of atonement. So imagine the whole nation, it was like this. Well, to be clear, it was just the Yahudim that were there at that time. But yes, this is the culture. And then they sacrificed Yahusha, and the apostles began to spread the faith in Yahusha. In Acts chapter 3, after Peter healed that man at the temple, he testified to them about their error of crucifying the Holy One sent to them. And then in Acts chapter 4, it says, however, many of those who heard the word believed, and the number of the men came to be about 5,000. That's found in Acts chapter 4, verse 4. You see, there were many Hebrews that began to believe in the Messiah and believe in what the prophets prophesied of this new covenant. But this was a huge change. And so they were now believing in Yahusha, but there was now a change. The apostles are now saying that to atone, for now on, you don't have to go to the Levitical priest. You don't have to sacrifice the blood of rams or goats any longer. Now, what you need to do is believe in the atonement that Yahusha provides. Imagine a situation like this. Like, bro, I think I just sinned against Yah. I saw my neighbor got a new herd of cattle and sheep. And I was like, how did he get that when I work harder than him? I was coveting, man, and I need to repent. I'm headed to the temple right now to atone. I'll see you later on today. Brother, remember, you're a believer in Messiah now. You don't need to go to the temple to atone. Wait, what are you talking about? What do you mean? If I don't go to the temple to atone, I won't be set right with Yah. My guy, haven't you understood anything the apostles have said? This is the new covenant, and Yahusha's sacrifice provides our atonement now. You don't have to sacrifice a goat anymore. Now what you must do is believe that Yahusha's sacrifice settles you before Yah. Nah, wait. So you're saying I'm right with Yah if I just believe in Yahusha's sacrifice? Just believe it? You're saying that's all I have to do. You read that letter from Paul that they read in the synagogue, right? He said, we conclude that a man is justified by faith apart from the deeds of the law. The apostles who walk with Yahusha have said that we are justified by faith in Yahusha's sacrifice and not by the sacrificing of blood. Oh, I don't know, man. That sounds a little risky. My parents, my grandparents, they have all kept this law and have been in good standing with Yah, and we've been blessed since we came back these past 100 years after captivity. What if you're wrong? And now I am not only dwelling in sin, but the sin is still here on my children. I don't know if I can take that risk, bro. I'm telling you, brother, you're not justified by the priest anymore. That system is done away. Remember, Yah said he's giving us a new covenant, and he won't remember our sin anymore. Yes, I do remember this. And I remember Yahusha spoke about him being the bread of life and what we need. I also remember John the Baptist, before he was killed, said Yahusha was the Lamb of Elohim, taking away the sins of the world. I remember all that, but I never really understood it all completely because these Pharisees, they were confusing me, bro. So it's true then. We only need to believe in Yahusha as our atonement, and we're forgiven, and we don't gotta go to the priest anymore? Yes, brother. We're saved by grace. We must have faith in this, and we must believe. This is what is required of us, belief. Wow, that's awesome, and a lot to process. I still don't truly understand though, because all of them down the street, they started believing in Yahusha as well. But I saw the brother Keziah just go to the Levites for something done in his home with his family. I don't think everyone really gets it, man. Yeah, it's funny. There was a letter that just came addressed to all of us who are struggling with this understanding. It breaks it all down. It's like a letter to all us Hebrews. Really? I need to read it. Let's go. And you see, that's why this letter to the Hebrews was so important. That's why all these letters from Paul were so important. They were teaching these new followers how to apply this covenant. They were no longer sacrificing goats and rams for atonement. And if you understood how big of a change that was to the way that they lived for thousands of years before, you would understand how big of trailblazers these Hebrews were. They were adapting to understanding how Yahusha's blood and sacrifice now provides them with atonement. So they needed to now trust in and believe in Yahusha for this and stop trying to justify themselves to Yah by doing sin offerings, because it literally is taking the sacrifice Yahusha made and taking it in vain and making it pointless. This is the actual faith. When they're actually taking the blood of rams and goats and saying this provides atonement, it makes Yahusha's sacrifice worthless. This is what the letters from Paul is speaking of. I do not set aside the grace of Elohim, for if righteousness comes through the law, then Messiah died in vain. That's Galatians chapter 2, verse 21. But Christians, they apply this completely wrong. When you understand exactly what Paul is saying here, it hits differently. The thing is that Christianity is a faith that comes from tares that never wanted to be obedient to Yah, and they never wanted to adapt to the culture of the Hebrews, as you see the quotes from the early church fathers from earlier. And many more of those quotes exist. And when you read them, you'll see that through the history, the Christianity that the world practices took the influence of these early church father men, and they created the doctrine of how they were going to use the sacrifice of Jesus as a justification for all of them, while also not aligning to what made Israel set apart to Yah. Do you know that pagan culture is obsessed with the afterlife? If you ever went to Egypt, you'll see that it's a religion that's focused on the dead and what happens when we die. The pagan culture of Greece, then Rome, is just a culture that extends from Egypt and then Babylon. They wanted doctrine that assured them of being secure when they crossed into the afterlife and they died. And these pagan, Gentile converts used the belief of Yahusha in the scriptures, and they tied it to their Greek philosophy and created a version of justification that they will be accepted by God when they die. And they used this doctrine of justification in the religion of Christianity while leaving out the rules and laws of the Hebrews that they rejected from the beginning. The quotes I read to you was from the beginning of the religion of Christianity. And they used these letters from Paul and other verses and created a doctrine of accepted lawlessness, because those reading these letters never understood the actual law that all these Hebrews knew and they lived under. And imagine, as Christianity grew, then Rome began to forbid the people to be tied to the Yahudim and not practice its feast or rest on the Sabbath with them. This was Rome. The churchmen on the Council of Nicaea, among other agendas, sought to separate the Yahudim from the Christians. They sought to separate the Jews from the Christians, so they forbade them to eat unleavened bread on Passover or even to celebrate this holiday at the same time as the Yahudim. It was at this event that they set the time of Easter, which went along with the pagan fertility festival, which is syncretism. But what they did was made Christianity separate from the ways of the Yahudim. They prohibited Christians from visiting synagogues and listening to any of the Yahudim preaching or teaching. And because of this is why no one cares for the chosen people of Yah today. And is exactly how the persecutions, the inquisitions, and complete rejection of the Yahudim over history was allowed. You see, the Roman Church made a complete separation from the Yahudim instead of understanding that all who come into the faith of Messiah are grafted into the Yasharel. They made sure that they were separated. They urged the Yahudim not to observe the day of rest on the same day that the Yahudim observed, and they instituted Sunday as the only Christian Sabbath. So it changed the day of rest to the first day of the week, which they call the 8th day, instead of the 7th day. Understand, Christianity made a completely new faith, and all that is well-documented history if you want to look it up. But here's the thing, for the true Yahudim who accepted Yahusha and were believing in him now, you have to understand that for those in the truth, no longer sacrificing goats and rams, but just saying that you trust that you're accepted, that was a crazy and risky concept. It went against accepted religion of their time, which is why the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, focused so much on faith. Being justified by faith is a completely new covenant. But nowhere did it ever say that everything else that Yah commanded is done away with. Not once do you see that. Do you recognize the amount of explanation that would need to be done on all topics in order to tell these people that the culture that they live under all their life means nothing anymore? I mean, in order for them to apply that type of belief, you best believe there will be explanation, a strong explanation of this. Yahuwah does not change. Everything he said and the way he guided his people are for good reason, and they still are valid today. And for those who follow them, you will find a more blessed life and more peace. This is not a faith led by Gentiles. Gentiles do not create this faith. Gentiles get aligned to the faith of the Hebrews. They do not create the doctrine of this faith. I mean, in this new covenant, as he promised he will remember our sins no more, he promised that he will be writing his law on our hearts. Yah's law will be written on believers' minds and in their hearts. This is in contrast to the first covenant that we went over in the last series, in which Yah wrote his law on tablets of stone. In the new covenant, he is writing these laws on our minds and our hearts, which is so important to understand. If you say the law is done away with, it makes absolutely no sense, because that's not the covenant. The covenant is that the same law that he wrote on tablets of stone, he's now writing on our hearts. So here's the thing. If you have a problem keeping his commandments, you have a problem with the new covenant. There is no abandoning the law. He is writing it on our hearts. The new covenant does not negate the law or the Torah. The new covenant writes the Torah on our hearts, so that if we walk according to the Spirit and how he moves in our life, we will be living according to the Torah and applying it through a circumcised heart. The new covenant does not remove the adherence of the Torah. The new covenant writes the Torah on our hearts, and he does this through the receiving of the Holy Spirit. And so there is no argument about whether we are to keep the commandments. We absolutely must keep them. And understand this, if you are ever speaking against keeping the Torah, it's because the Torah that should be written on your heart has been quenched. And that's the exact reason why the devil wants to keep you out of the Old Testament, because when you read it, you will reignite the fire and his spirit, which will lead you to keep his Torah and live the way our Father has always desired. What changed in the new covenant is the priesthood. And we have a direct training manual in the book of Hebrews that explains this. If you have not watched my series breaking this book down, please go back and review this. The devil has deceived a great deal of people, teaching them that our Father's laws and commandments no longer apply. It brings people away from the desire to have a set-apart, obedient relationship with our Father. It quenches the spirit as he leads you to repentance and change, because you think you're doing too much or you're doing something wrong. The only one that wins by you not keeping the Torah is the devil. Please tell me how this world would be wrong if this whole world was under this Torah. Here's the thing, and the hard part to hear. If you don't understand this and how important that question is, you won't be coming into the kingdom, because this kingdom will be for Yahusha, our king, ruling with a rod of iron. And if you think he's accepting you, lawless ones that don't desire his Torah, you're deceiving yourself. Right now, you should be preparing yourself for him, and I promise you, a lawless attitude will be rejected. You won't get it all right immediately, but the more you try, the better you will be, truly, until you are a new creation. Imagine accepting his sacrifice for your sins, and you continuously dwell in sin because sin is transgression of the law. So if you hate the law, you're always in transgression of it. Whosoever commits sin transgresses against the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. If sin is the transgression of the law, then how can you say you don't have a law to follow? That is being double-minded, and it will lead your soul where you really don't want it to go. Please understand what changed in the law and apply the scriptures in context, and not through false religion of tares leading the masses to the pit of hell. This has been communicated to you, so no one can say that it has not been said. Please don't harden your hearts to this and make this about me. If you don't know or understand how Israel had to atone, then you didn't understand what the difference in atonement for them looked like. If you didn't understand what the works of the law for them was, or being justified under the law looked like, you didn't understand what really changed in the new covenant. If you didn't understand what was written in the book of Hebrews as he communicated what the change was in the law, you didn't really understand this new covenant. Now you do, and you still have a chance to repent and accept Yahusha truly through his sacrifice and truly live a life away from sin and be accepted by Yah. If you are willing to bet your soul on this understanding Christianity has provided you, then so be it. But I feel blessed knowing that I've done this work and presented this truth to those who needed to hear it and see it. Please, study to show yourselves approved. And above all, repent. For the kingdom of Yahuwah is truly at hand. Be ready for it. And be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share this video with others. If you haven't already done so, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. I really would like to give a special thank you and shout out to those who have donated and continue to support this ministry. I'm very thankful for the love of our Father, and I thank you for your obedience to Yah's call on your heart. I'm always humbled by your support, and I'm very thankful for you. You know who you are. Okay, thanks again, everyone, for watching. Make our Creator, the Most High, the priority right now. Be ready for the kingdom. Be blessed. I love you all.